Dawn breaks over a sawmill in the hollow, and already the saw is screaming through timber. Before the whistle even sounds, a barefoot boy is bent double, dragging a rounded, bark-covered slab twice his size across the mud toward the discard pile. Nobody remembers his real name anymore. They just called him the Bark Kid, after the curling brown husks he hauled all day, every day, for pennies a load. It was the meanest job the mill had, and he did it without complaint. To understand why, you have to understand what a slab actually is. When a mill squares a round log into straight lumber, it slices off the curved outer edges, bark and all. Those curved leftovers are called slabs. They are the tree's rejected shell, not lumber, not firewood even, if you had a choice. Slabs carry too much bark and soft sapwood to burn hot or clean. A low-grade, throwaway byproduct nobody wanted. So mills gave slabs away, chipped them or let them rot in heaps out back. And hauling that heap, dragging waste nobody valued from saw carriage to scrap pile, was the cheapest labor a mill could buy. That was the Bark Kid's job. Whole settlements grew up around these very piles. Frontier folks had a name for them, Slab City. A sneer, really, aimed at the shanty towns clustered near a mill's trash heap. Some of those places became real towns, with blacksmiths and post offices. But even Slab City wanted nothing to do with the slabs themselves. Before the log even reaches the saw, workers strip its bark, the tree's tough outer armor, and that bark clings to every slab that follows, marking it as junk wood. So when they called him the Bark Kid, it wasn't a kind name. It meant the one who does the dirtiest, lowest job at the mill, the one hauling what everyone else had already thrown away. He hauled from sunup past noon, load after load, his shoulders raw from bark that scraped worse than sandpaper. A grown man's wage for this work would have been an insult. A boy's wage was even less. He was maybe 10 years old, maybe 12. Nobody kept exact records of boys like him. What they did keep track of was tonnage, how many slabs he could move before the whistle called quitting time. But even the lowest job teaches something. Every slab he dragged had once been outer bark, sapwood, the tree's living skin, and something in him started paying attention to wood, to fire, to how things cure and change over time. Because a few miles from that mill, another fire was already burning, low, slow, and smoky, tended by families who'd learned it from their own parents. That fire belonged to the Smokehouse, and soon enough, it would belong to him. The first hard frost comes early that year, silvering the fields overnight. Word passes farm to farm without a single letter written. Everyone knows what it means. Hog-killing time has arrived, and for 3 or 4 days, the whole hollow moves as one. Neighbors arrive before sunrise, wagons creaking down the lane. This isn't one family's chore. It's a shared machine of hands, built from generations of doing this exact work together, every single year since anyone can remember. The boy's job isn't the knife yet, it's the wood. He's sent running to the pile again and again, arms stacked with split hickory, feeding a fire that has to burn steady for days, not hours. Then he's sent for sage, crushing dried leaves between his palms until the smell coats his skin. Every family has its own blend brewing somewhere close by, and none of them will say what's in it. Hickory smoke has to be sweet, never bitter. Pine, oak, walnut, any strong or sour wood will ruin weeks of work in a single afternoon. Getting the fuel right is the first lesson, and it is not optional. By midday, the real work starts. Hams, shoulders, and slabs of bacon are laid across rough wooden tables, trimmed clean by hands that have done this 1,000 times. The boy watching every cut from just behind their elbows. Then comes the rub, salt first, always salt, followed by brown sugar, black pepper, sometimes red pepper or a pinch of clove. Each family mixes its own ratio in private, treating the recipe like a locked drawer. No two households season the same way, and nobody explains why. Some swear by extra sugar, some by a heavier hand with pepper. It's inheritance passed down in pinches and handfuls, never written on paper. Once rubbed, the meat goes into tubs of coarse salt, not for a night, not for a week, but for roughly 6 weeks straight, the salt slowly pulling almost all the moisture out of the flesh. That waiting is its own kind of danger. Too little salt, and the meat spoils before it ever sees smoke. Too much heat in the shed later, and weeks of patience turn into a ruined ham overnight. The boy learns this by watching failure, not by being told. He sees a neighbor's shoulder go gray and soft one year, tossed to the dogs, and understands instantly what 6 careless weeks can cost a family. After the salt draws its share, the cuts are washed, dried, and finally carried to the smokehouse door. The same low building he passed every day without a second glance, now suddenly the center of everything. Inside, there are no windows at all. None, on purpose. Consistent humidity and steady temperature matter more than light, and the boy will spend years learning to read that darkness by smell and touch alone. Inside, the boy learns the smokehouse is barely bigger than a stall, 8, maybe 14 feet square, small on purpose. A cramped box holds smoke and warmth evenly, where a barn-sized room would let both slip away and ruin the meat. He learns the calendar first. This isn't an afternoon job. A ham hung today might not come down for 2 weeks. Some, cured for competition or deep winter storage, hang for a year before they're ready to eat. Before smoke ever touches the meat, salt does the work. Hams and shoulders sit packed in coarse salt for roughly 6 weeks, the salt slowly pulling water out of the flesh, starving any bacteria of the moisture it needs to survive. Only then does the boy learn what wood is allowed near the fire. Hickory is called a sweet wood, the prize fuel. Pine, oak, walnut, anything sour or resinous is banned outright. One wrong log and weeks of work are wasted. An old Tennessee account from 1880 spells it out plainly. Smoke it well with green hickory billets. Use hickory for all of it, and never let pine, oak, or walnut anywhere near the fire. The rule was absolute, not a suggestion. Heat is the next lesson, and it's unforgiving. Cross 120 degrees Fahrenheit inside that box, and the process stops being smoking and starts being cooking. The cure collapses. Weeks of salt, wood, and patience, gone in an afternoon of carelessness. So the fire is never ablaze. It's a smolder, tended low and slow, sometimes for a full week or 2 straight, someone checking it through the night. The boy takes his turn watching embers while the rest of the farm sleeps. Every family guards its own seasoning like a trade secret. Salt, brown sugar, black pepper, sometimes cloves or red pepper, mixed in ratios no one writes down. The boy is trusted to memorize a formula, not read one. None of this is folk guesswork. It's discipline passed down as law. Get the humidity wrong, the wood wrong, the heat wrong, and there's no second batch. A ruined ham means a family goes without meat until next winter's kill. A finished ham was worth stealing, and everyone knew it. Smokehouses were built sturdy and often locked, not against weather, but against thieves and animals, drawn by the smell of months of labor hanging just out of reach. What the boy doesn't yet know is how old this craft really is. Archaeologists trace smoked meat back tens of thousands of years, to Ice Age caves in Europe, to ancient hearths in Mesopotamia. He's inheriting one of humanity's oldest technologies. By the time he's trusted with his own fire, the boy who once dragged bark and slab wood for pennies is running calculations no thermometer can replace, reading smoke color, wood scent, and meat texture the way other men read a gauge. By fair day, the smokehouse holds 40 hams, each one a bet. Word has spread through the county that the boy who once hauled slabs now smokes meat worth tasting, and someone finally dares him to prove it against the licensed butcher's best. The county butcher runs the real shop, scales, a license on the wall, an 8 to 18-hour smoking process learned from German masters. His hams are consistent, correct, and utterly by the book. That is exactly the standard the boy has to break. No trophy is on the table, just pride and a side of bacon. Neighbors slice both hams thin, laying them side by side on tin plates. The rules are simple. Whoever's meat disappears first from the crowd's hands wins the argument. The butcher's ham is clean, salty, textbook, the taste of correct procedure. The boy's ham carries something else, a hickory sweetness under the smoke, a texture that holds without drying, the mark of a fire he adjusted by nose and eye for 2 straight weeks. There's no scoreboard, no ribbon pinned to a chest, but when the plate's empty and the crowd drifts back to the boy's table for seconds, everyone standing there understands exactly what just happened, without a single word said aloud. The story that spreads afterward is simple and merciless the way folklore always is. The kid who used to haul waste wood for pennies just outcured the man with the license on his wall. The nickname stops being an insult and becomes a title. Whether it happened exactly this way, no ledger says. No court record, no newspaper clipping names the Bark Kid directly. What survives is the shape of the story, because that shape keeps happening, generation after generation, in real smokehouses across the country. Take Gary Bardeen, a real 4th-generation butcher running an independent family shop, not a factory line. He has won over 250 awards in state and national competitions for his sausages and smoked meats. Proof the small operator still beats the institution. In Saugerties, New York, the Deutsche Metzgerei still brines slabs of meat in salt water and smokes them naturally for 8 to 18 hours, the trained standard passed down for generations. It's the same bar every self-taught curer, real or legendary, has had to clear. Mike and Heidi Ferraro run a smokehouse legacy stretching back more than 50 years. Heidi's own father ran a sawmill, the same sawmill to smokehouse thread the legend imagines. Real families still walking it today, without ever hearing the name, Bark Kid. That's the real engine behind the legend. Not one boy's miracle, but a whole rural science. Salt, hickory, patience, temperature held under 120 degrees, mastered outside any classroom, passed hand to hand, instead of framed on a wall. No document proves a boy named the Bark Kid ever lived. What's certain is that the world he came from was real. Slab piles, hog-killing frosts, secret spice rubs, and smokehouses guarded like vaults. The legend borrows its truth from a craft that never needed a license to be excellent. That's why the story still travels porch to porch, decades on. It says, skill can outrun status, that patience and a good fire can beat a diploma. True record or tall tale, the Bark Kid still teaches the same lessons smoke always has. Subscribe for more legends worth chasing down.